I was halfway through reheating leftover pasta when my phone buzzed across the kitchen counter. A text from her. Samantha, family dinner tomorrow night. 7 p.m. at Aurelio's. Don't be late. No greeting, no emojis, no small talk, just that commanding tone that always made me feel 12 again. I stared at the message, the soft hum of my apartment's fridge the only sound filling the room. It had been almost 6 months since I'd last seen my sister. 6 months since our mother's funeral, where Samantha's carefully rehearsed tears fell at all the right moments, while mine refused to appear at all. I'm Emily, 32 years old, and I live in Seattle, in a small one-bedroom that smells perpetually of coffee and rain. I work as a freelance graphic designer, the kind of job Samantha used to call a hobby for people afraid of real work. Still, I'd been getting by. Paying my rent, keeping my plants alive, finding small pieces of calm. I'd started to believe maybe, just maybe, peace was something I could have. Then that message appeared. Aurelio's wasn't just any restaurant. It was Samantha's go-to place for announcements, promotions, engagements, pregnancy reveals. Whatever this dinner was, it wasn't casual. I set my phone down, the heat from the pasta now gone cold. I tried to convince myself to ignore it, but there was something in the wording. Family dinner. Family. That word used to mean something before our mother died. Before Samantha decided I was the broken one, I almost texted back, I can't make it. But I didn't, because part of me still wanted to belong. By the time I arrived at Aurelio's, the sky was already blurring into a deep, damp gray. The restaurant's windows glowed with warmth, and through them, I could see Samantha's perfect posture. Her blonde hair catching the light like a halo she didn't deserve. She was with her husband, Ryan, a corporate lawyer who never looked at people when they spoke. And to my surprise, and slight panic, our father was there too. Dad almost never came to these things. He'd retreated into silence since Mom passed, hiding behind his garden and whiskey. Seeing him there made my stomach twist. Samantha waved me over like she was doing me a favor. Em, you made it. Her voice was sugar-coated poison. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Wouldn't miss a family dinner. Ryan barely looked up from his phone. Dad gave a small nod, eyes tired but soft. I sat down, already feeling out of place. The table was covered in expensive menus, wine glasses like crystal traps waiting to be filled. Dinner began with polite conversation. Samantha's new house in Bellevue, Ryan's latest client, and Dad's garden. No one asked about my work. No one ever did. I listened, smiled where appropriate, and took small sips of water. The waiter came, and before I could open my mouth, Samantha ordered for all of us. She'll have the truffle risotto, she said, gesturing to me. She loves that, don't you, Em? I hadn't eaten truffle risotto in years. It always made me nauseous. But I nodded anyway. Dad glanced at me with a faint, guilty look. I caught it and smiled, pretending everything was fine. That's what I always did. Pretend. Halfway through the meal, Samantha lifted her wine glass, her diamond ring catching the candlelight. So, she said brightly, I have some exciting news. Ryan finally looked up, smirking like he already knew. Dad's fork paused mid-air. I braced myself. Samantha smiled widely, every tooth polished, every word rehearsed. Ryan and I are adopting. It's official. Dad blinked. Adopting? She nodded. A baby boy. From Spain. We've been on the list for months, but it's finally happening. The table erupted in polite congratulations, mostly from Dad. Ryan grinned like he'd just won something. I managed a soft, That's great, Sam. But something in her eyes told me this wasn't about celebration. This was about power. As the plates were cleared and dessert menus arrived, Samantha turned to me with a sudden, cool smile. Actually, Em, she said, there's something else I wanted to talk to you about. Her tone dropped, the air tightening between us. I looked up, fork hovering. Okay, she leaned forward. About Mom's will. Dad's shoulders stiffened, We were supposed to split her estate equally, Samantha continued. But given your situation, financial instability, I thought it made more sense for me to handle the remainder of her accounts, responsibly. I felt my pulse spike. What do you mean by handle? She smiled like a cat. I already spoke to the lawyer. It's been transferred. Past tense. The words hit like ice water. Dad opened his mouth. Samantha, that's not what your mother... But Samantha held up a hand. Dad, please. Let's not make this dramatic. I stared at her, trying to process. You took Mom's money? Not took him, she said sweetly. Protected. You've never been good with, anything long-term. Ryan chuckled quietly. I could feel the heat building under my skin, but I forced myself to breathe. You had no right, she sipped her wine. You're not in a position to talk about rights. You barely, she smiled cruelly, function as part of this family anymore. The table went silent. Dad looked down. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. What's that supposed to mean? Samantha leaned back, eyes gleaming. It means, Em, you've always been the outsider. The stray, the one Mom pitied. You're not real family, not in the way the rest of us are. The room blurred. My chest hollowed out. I stood up, hands shaking. And for the first time in years, I saw her clearly. The woman who'd turned our mother's death into a stage for her own performance. I wanted to leave, to run, to scream. But before I could move, the waiter returned, smiling, oblivious, and placed a sleek black leather folder in front of me. Here you go, miss, he said. The check, I blinked at him. Sorry? He nodded politely. The bill for the table, Samantha smirked, lifting her glass again. It's all yours, Em, she said lightly. Since you wanted to feel included, I opened the folder. 5375, the numbers swam. Ryan laughed quietly. Dad looked horrified but didn't move. And Samantha? She just smiled. Like she'd been planning this moment all along. I didn't cry. Not there. Not then. I just nodded, closed the folder, and said quietly, Of course. Family, right? Her smile widened. Victory sealed. But she didn't know. She didn't know that this humiliation was the last straw, because I might not be Harriel family to her, but I was about to become her biggest regret. When I got home that night, I didn't turn the lights on. The city outside my window was still alive, car horns echoing through the damp streets, neon bleeding against the fog, but inside, everything felt muted, cold. The receipt from Aurelio's was still in my coat pocket, the ink slightly smudged from the rain. 5-3-75-42s I'd looked at it so many times on the ride home that the numbers had burned themselves into my brain. I set it on the counter beside my empty coffee mug and stared at it until my vision blurred. For years, I'd convinced myself Samantha's cruelty came from insecurity, from the pressure she carried as the perfect daughter. But that night, it hit me differently. It wasn't insecurity. It was satisfaction. She enjoyed it, and for the first time, I stopped trying to understand her. Note Ariel family. The phrase looped in my head like a curse. It wasn't just an insult. It was history rewritten. Samantha and I grew up in the same house, ate the same burnt pancakes Dad tried to make on weekends, and held each other when Mom had her chemo treatments. But in her version of events, I was the intruder. She'd always been the golden one. Straight A's. Varsity everything. The first to get married. The one Mom bragged about. I was the creative mess. The one who left college early, moved into the city, and never quite figured things out. Still, I was there when Mom needed someone at 3 a.m. I was the one holding her hand when she took her last breath. And that, apparently, meant nothing. The next morning, I went through my savings. I didn't have much, certainly not $5,000 to throw away on humiliation. But what I did have was time. And focus. And the kind of quiet rage that doesn't explode. It corrodes. I transferred the money to the restaurant because I knew if I didn't, Samantha would find a way to use it against me. Then I opened my laptop and started researching inheritance disputes, unauthorized account transfers, forgery and estate settlements. The lawyer Mom had used, a man named Harold Benson, was still practicing. His office was just outside Bellevue. I sent him an email, short and polite. "Hello, I'm Emily Harper, daughter of the late Margaret Harper. I'd like to discuss the final distribution of her estate. Please let me know when you're available." He replied within an hour. Harold's office smelled faintly of old books and furniture polish. He was a small man with a kind face, and when he saw me, he smiled in that cautious way lawyers do when they suspect conflict. "Emily," he said, shaking my hand. "It's been a while. How are you holding up?" I gave a small shrug, trying to make sense of things. He nodded, gesturing for me to sit. "I assume this is about your sister." So he knew. I didn't speak for a moment. "She said she moved Mom's remaining accounts into her name." "Without telling me," he sighed. "I was wondering when you'd reach out. Samantha came in last month with a power of attorney document. Said you'd agreed to let her manage the funds." My stomach turned. "What?" He opened a file on his desk, sliding out a neatly stapled packet. "This one." I stared at the signature on the bottom. My name, my handwriting, but I'd never signed it. "She forged it," I whispered. Harold nodded solemnly. "That's what I suspected. But I can't move on it without proof." I sat back, breath-catching. Proof. Of course. There always had to be proof. That night, I went through the old box I kept under my bed. Photos, letters, scraps of the past that somehow survived the chaos of life. At the bottom was a card from Mom. It was dated a month before she died. No matter how different you and Sam are, remember, you're both my girls. And when I'm gone, I want you to take care of each other. I've made sure you'll both be secure." Secure. That word stung now. Because Mom had trusted Samantha, and Samantha had used that trust as a weapon. I closed the card, tears burning behind my eyes. Then I took a long breath and whispered, "Okay, you want to play games, Sam? Let's play." Over the next week, I started small. Samantha was a creature of routine. Pilates at 6, meetings at her firm until 5, dinner at some overpriced place at 7. I knew her patterns, her friends, even the way she smiled when she lied. I also knew she kept everything digital. She had this obsession with control. Email folders labeled taxes, charity, household, and even legacy. So, I found a way in. Ryan's company website had staff emails listed publicly. Samantha had once bragged about using the same password for everything because no one would dare hack me. It took me 3 guesses: her birth year, her wedding date, and finally, our mother's birthday. It worked. Her inbox was a gold mine. Buried between dinner reservations and home decor receipts was an email thread with Harold Benson, my mother's lawyer. From Samantha Harper to Harold Benson. Per my discussion with Emily, please find attached the signed authorization allowing me to manage the remaining estate funds. She's fine with me taking care of the transfer. She doesn't want the responsibility attached. The forged document, the timestamp made my blood run cold. It was sent 3 days after Mom's funeral. 3 days while I was still unpacking her hospital bag. Samantha was transferring money. I sat back, the room spinning, a strange calm settling over me. This wasn't just theft. It was betrayal carved in ink. I printed everything. The emails, the attachments, even the metadata showing the timestamps. Then I tucked it all into a folder. The next morning, I sent a copy to Harold with a simple note. "Here's your proof." By Friday, Harold called me. His voice was grave but steady. "Emily, thank you for sending that. I'll be filing an injunction to freeze the account until the issue is reviewed." "This might get messy," I smiled faintly. "It's already messy." He hesitated. "Do you want me to contact your sister directly?" I thought about it, About Samantha's perfect face, her cruel smirk, the way she made me feel small at that dinner. No, I said softly. Let her find out the hard way. 2 days later, my phone rang, Samantha. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some part of me wanted to hear it. The moment she realized she'd lost control, I answered. She said sharply. What did you do? I kept my voice even. You'll have to be more specific. Don't play stupid. The bank froze the account. They're investigating a fraudulent authorization. What did you tell them? Nothing but the truth. There was silence, then a hiss. You think this will make Mom proud? You're pathetic. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Funny, I was just thinking the same about you. She hung up. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up in panic. The money wasn't what mattered anymore. It was what it symbolized. My mother's legacy and my right to exist within it. But I knew Samantha wouldn't stop. She never did, and I had no intention of backing down either, because now I wasn't just her sister, I was her reckoning. For the first few days after the bank froze the account, I thought maybe that was it. That maybe Samantha would finally back off, realize she'd crossed a line, and retreat to her perfect little suburban castle in Bellevue. But Samantha never surrendered quietly. She didn't know how. I realized that the same week when I walked into my apartment lobby and found an envelope waiting for me. It wasn't from the bank or from Harold. It was from a law firm, Grayson & Cohen, printed in expensive gold ink. Inside was a crisp letter addressed to me. Notice of intent to pursue defamation and breach of fiduciary duty. Our client, Mrs. Samantha Harper, alleges that you have made false and damaging claims regarding her management of the late Margaret Harper's estate. I read the words 3 times, then laughed out loud. She was suing me. That night, I sat on my couch, letter trembling in my hand. My cat Milo rubbed against my leg, sensing the storm rolling off me. I wasn't scared of a lawsuit. Not exactly. I didn't have enough money for Samantha to take even if she won, but I was scared of what she'd do next. Samantha had always been terrifying in her precision. When she wanted to destroy someone, she did it neatly, with legal papers, with social gossip, with that saccharine smile that made people believe she was the victim, and that's exactly what she did next. Within days, my phone started buzzing with messages, old friends, family friends, even a couple of my freelance clients. Hey, I heard there's some legal stuff going on with your mom's estate. Everything okay? Sam posted something about being betrayed by family. Just checking in. I didn't have to look far to find it. On Samantha's Instagram, her curated feed of white kitchens, luxury candles and perfect smiles. There it was, a long, heartfelt caption under a photo of her holding a baby blanket. Family means trust. It breaks my heart when someone you love takes advantage of your kindness. But we rise, we heal. We protect what's sacred. Your family first. Trust eyes everything. Thousands of likes. Comments full of sympathy. And not a single mention of me by name. But she didn't need to. Everyone knew. I scrolled through the comments, feeling something in me fracture. I wasn't angry anymore. I was hollow. 2 days later, Dad called. His voice sounded older than I remembered. He said softly, your sister came by. She told me what's been happening. I sat up straight. And what did she tell you? That you're accusing her of stealing, that you froze your mother's accounts without talking to her. He paused. She says you're confused. That you're not well. My throat closed up. She said that? He sighed. You know how she gets, honey. She thinks she's helping. Helping. That word again. I stood up, pacing the room. Dad, she forged my signature. I have proof. I just don't want to see you girls fight, he said gently. It's not what your mother wanted. I pressed my palm against my forehead, feeling the tears start to sting. What Mom wanted was for us to take care of each other, not for her favorite child to steal everything. He didn't respond. When the silence stretched too long, I whispered, You believe her, don't you? He exhaled slowly. I just want peace, Em. The line went dead. That weekend, I got an email from one of my biggest clients, a sustainable design company I'd worked with for almost a year. "Hey, Emily, we've decided to pause your contract for now. We heard some concerns about reliability and professionalism. Hope you understand." Concerns. I knew exactly where those concerns came from. Samantha's reach was long, her poison subtle. I stared at the email, every muscle in my body tightening. She wasn't just taking money anymore, she was taking my name. By Monday, I'd had enough. I drove to her house in Bellevue, the kind of place that looked like it had its own PR agent. Manicured lawn, stone driveway, a front door the color of arrogance. The next day, I met Harold again. He was already aware of Samantha's lawsuit. "Typical preemptive tactic," he said, flipping through papers. "She's trying to control the narrative. But with the forged signature, we have leverage." "What happens next?" I asked. "She'll drag this out. She wants to drain you emotionally, maybe financially. But if we stay patient, the truth wins." I laughed bitterly. "You sound like my mother." He smiled softly. "Maybe that's a good thing." That night, as I was sorting through more of Mom's old papers, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Hi, is this Emily Harper?" "Yes, this is Claire. I used to work with your sister." I froze. "Work with her?" "Yes, I left the firm 2 months ago." I saw what she was doing. She used company resources to access financial documents under your name. I kept a copy before I left. My heart skipped. "You have evidence?" "Yes, emails, internal memos, time logs. If you want them, they're yours, but you didn't hear it from me?" I couldn't breathe for a second. "Why are you helping me?" She hesitated. "Because I used to have a sister like her, too." By midnight, my inbox had the files. Dozens of them. Every message, every digital footprint of Samantha's manipulation. It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was years of deceit. Tax evasion, misuse of funds, and even falsified charity donations. My sister had built her empire on lies, and now I had the map to every crack in it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my balcony, the city lights shimmering through the mist, the smell of rain hanging heavy in the air. I thought about what it meant to win. It wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about reclaiming the version of myself that she'd tried to erase. The one who didn't need her approval, her validation, or her definition of family. But I also knew this wasn't over. Samantha wouldn't crumble quietly, and I wasn't done breaking her facade. When she opened it, she looked surprised, but only for a moment. Then came that perfect, polished smile. What a surprise." "Cut the act," I said. "You're lying to everyone, Dad, my clients, online." "Why?" She tilted her head. "Because you made me look like a criminal." "You are a criminal." Her expression hardened. "Careful. You sound unstable." That word again. Unstable. She wielded it like a blade. I took a step forward. "You forged Mom's documents, Sam. You stole from her, from me." "I have proof," she smiled faintly. "Then take it to court." I froze. Because that's when I realized what this really was. She wanted a fight. She wanted me to break, to lose control, to become the unstable sister she told everyone I was. And standing in that doorway, staring at her calm, perfect face, I almost did. Almost. Instead, I smiled. "You're right. Court sounds perfect." Then I turned and walked away. Her voice followed me down the steps. "You'll regret this, Em. You always do." Maybe, but so would she. The next morning I woke before the sun. Not because I couldn't sleep. I hadn't even tried. My laptop still glowed faintly from the night before, the folder labeled Samantha Evidence pulsing like a live wire on the screen. I opened it again, scanning the files, my eyes raw from exhaustion. Each email, each transaction, each subtle manipulation, all of it formed a web that finally made sense. Samantha wasn't just selfish. She was calculated. And she had built her perfect reputation on stolen bones. I knew from the start that going to court wouldn't be enough. Samantha thrived in places with rules, She twisted them, weaponized them. I needed to hit her where she couldn't spin the story. Publicly, not through gossip. Not through another family scene. Through truth. Verified, undeniable truth. I called Harold first. He answered on the second ring, his voice weary but alert. Emily, I was just about to call you. The preliminary hearing. I found more, I interrupted. Emails, internal records. It's worse than we thought. He went quiet for a long moment. Send them to me, he said finally. And Emily, whatever you do, don't confront her again. Not directly. I didn't answer right away. Because I already knew I would. I'd never done anything like it before. But I'd learned enough about online exposure from my clients to know how stories spread. I contacted a local investigative journalist I'd followed for years, Maya Torres, known for tearing apart high society scandals and nonprofit frauds. Her tagline was famous. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. I sent her a message. Hi, Maya. I have documents showing financial fraud and identity forgery tied to a Bellevue attorney, Samantha Harper. It involves the misuse of estate funds and falsified charity donations. All verified. Are you interested? She replied within 20 minutes. If it's real, I'm very interested. We met the next day at a cafe downtown. Quiet. Neutral, anonymous. Maya was in her 40s. With sharp eyes and the kind of patience that made people tell her things they shouldn't. I handed her a flash drive. Everything's in there. Emails, transfers, signatures, even metadata. She plugged it into her laptop, scrolling through silently for what felt like hours. Then she looked up. This isn't just a family dispute, she said. This is criminal. I nodded slowly. I know. Are you sure you want to go public with this? It'll destroy her reputation. And yours might get dragged too. I took a deep breath. She already destroyed mine. The article dropped 3 days later. The headline was brutal. Local attorney under investigation for forgery, estate fraud, and charitable misuse. Sources confirm family member as victim. The photo was Samantha's, one of her professional headshots from her firm's website. The tone was factual, surgical. The evidence is undeniable. By noon, her firm had released a statement. We are aware of serious allegations involving one of our associates, Samantha Harper. She has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. By evening, her Instagram was gone, and by midnight she called me. The phone rang once, twice. M, she said. Voice trembling, not with rage this time, but panic. What did you do? I told the truth. You had no right. You could have come to me. I laughed quietly. I did, remember? You told me to take it to court. She went silent. Then her voice cracked. You don't understand. This will ruin me. For a second, just a second, I almost felt something. Guilt, maybe. But then I remembered her words at that dinner. You're not Ariel family. I steadied my breath. Then, maybe you should have thought of that before you forged Mom's will. Her tone shifted, desperate. Dad's sick, Em. He's been asking about us. About you. My stomach dropped. What do you mean sick? She hesitated. I didn't want to tell you until it was confirmed. He's been in and out of the hospital. Liver failure. The stress, the drinking. He's worse. I felt my throat tighten. When were you planning to tell me? Silence. Then softly. After the hearing. I hung up before I could say anything else. 2 days later, I drove to Dad's house. The blinds were half closed. The air inside stale with old whiskey and dust. He was sitting in his recliner, thinner than I remembered, a blanket over his legs. Em, he said, smiling faintly. You came. I knelt beside him. You should have called me, Dad. He waved a hand weakly. Didn't want to worry you girls. Thought I'd be fine. I glanced at the half-empty glass on the table. You're not fine, he sighed. You two, always at war. I don't know what happened between you, but I can't die knowing you hate each other. I swallowed hard. I don't hate her. He looked at me, eyes cloudy but kind. Then forgive her, I wanted to. God, I wanted to, but forgiveness felt like a luxury she hadn't earned yet. By the end of the week, Samantha's firm had terminated her. The state bar launched an ethics investigation. Her husband, Ryan, filed for separation, something about reputation risk. She called once more, left a voicemail I couldn't bring myself to delete. "You've won, Em. Are you happy now?" Was I? Not really. Revenge doesn't come with the satisfaction you imagine. It doesn't heal you. It just ends the bleeding. But that ending, that silence after the storm, it was something. One night, while organizing old files for Harold's next court date, I found a draft email in my mother's digital folder, one she never sent. It was addressed to both of us. "Girls, I know there's tension between you. Life has a way of making sisters forget they're on the same side. But one day when I'm gone, you'll both realize money doesn't buy peace. Family does. Don't let me die twice by losing each other." I sat there staring at it, the cursor blinking like an open wound. Mom had believed in us, even when we didn't deserve it. That night, I wrote Samantha one final message. "You hurt me. You stole from me. But I don't want to keep living in your shadow or your hatred. I'm not forgiving you yet, but I'm letting go. Whatever happens next is up to you." I didn't expect a reply. But the next morning, there it was. "I don't deserve forgiveness. But thank you for giving me something to hope for. Tell Dad I'm sorry." A week later, I visited Dad again. He looked better, weaker but peaceful. We watched the rain together in silence, the sound steady and rhythmic. He didn't ask about the case. Didn't mention Samantha. He just said, "You did what you had to do, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I did." He smiled faintly. "Your mother would have understood." For the first time in a long while, I believed him. It's strange how quiet the world gets when guilt moves in. Even the smallest sounds, a clock ticking, a faucet dripping, start to feel like they're accusing you of something. I spent that first week after the article trying to convince myself that I'd done the right thing. That exposing Samantha was justice, not cruelty. But every time my phone buzzed with a hospital update about Dad, I felt a sting behind my ribs, because maybe she was right. Maybe the stress had pushed him over the edge. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and rain-soaked wool. I'd been there almost every day, bringing books he never read and flowers he never noticed. The first time Samantha showed up, I wasn't ready for it. I was sitting beside his bed, reading aloud from The Old Man and the Sea when the door opened. Her reflection appeared in the window glass, hair tied back, no makeup, her confidence gone. "Em," she said quietly. I didn't turn around. "You're not supposed to be here." She stepped closer. I called ahead. "They said family can visit." That word again, family. I finally looked up. Her eyes were red, her voice small. I'd never seen her look human before. "How is he?" she asked. "Stable." "But weak," she nodded, biting her lip. "I've been calling him, but he won't answer." "He's tired," I said. "You can talk to him now." She hesitated, then moved toward the bed. Dad stirred at the sound of her voice. "Sam?" "I'm here, Dad." She took his hand, tears spilling silently. "I'm sorry for everything. For the stress, the fighting." His lips trembled into a smile. "My girls?" I turned away, giving them privacy. But even as I looked out the window, I could hear his words, slurred but steady. "Promise me you'll look after each other." Neither of us answered. After that visit, Samantha started coming more often. Sometimes she'd bring food. Sometimes she'd just sit. We didn't talk much, just small things. It felt unnatural, like pretending the past hadn't happened. But Dad seemed calmer when we were both there, so I forced myself to stay civil. Still, every time she smiled or asked me how I was doing, something inside me recoiled, because I didn't trust it, because I didn't know if she was trying to heal or manipulate again. The story about her fraud had spread far beyond Seattle. Blogs, forums, and even a few legal podcasts picked it up. People debated the ethics, the family betrayal, and the morality of exposing blood, and they didn't all take my side. Some called me brave. Others called me vindictive. "You don't ruin your sister's life like that," one comment read. "Family fights should stay private," another said. I told myself not to read them. But I did. Every word was a mirror reflecting something ugly. That's when the nightmares started. Flashes of Mom's face. The sound of Samantha's voice at dinner. The waiter setting down that cursed check. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. gasping for air. Heart hammering like I was still there. Still humiliated. Still powerless. But I wasn't powerless anymore. I'd taken back everything she stole. So why did I still feel like the villain? One night, after another long day at the hospital, I came home to find a voicemail. It was Samantha. I don't know what I'm supposed to say anymore. I'm losing everything. My job, my house, Ryan's gone. I keep thinking about Mom. I keep wondering if maybe I deserve it. But I can't sleep knowing that you still hate me. Her voice cracked at the end. I replayed it 3 times, waiting for the venom, the manipulation. But it wasn't there. It was just broken. The next day, I brought Dad his favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs with too much salt, and found Samantha already there, folding his laundry. We stared at each other, awkwardly. "He's asleep," she whispered. I nodded and sat down beside her. After a long silence, she said, "You know, Mom used to tell me you were her heart." I looked at her confused. "What?" She said I was her pride, but you were her heart. I didn't understand that until she was gone. I swallowed hard. "Then why did you take from me?" Her eyes filled again. "Because I wanted to feel like her favorite, just once." "You had her love, Em, even when you thought you didn't." The words hit harder than I expected. We sat there in silence, the hum of hospital machines filling the space between us. For the first time in years, there was no performance, no pretending. Just 2 sisters sitting beside the man who'd loved them both in his quiet, flawed way. A few days later, Harold called. "Emily," he said, "the court reviewed the evidence. The estate will be split equally, as originally intended. Samantha's barred from managing future funds, but she won't face prison if she cooperates." I didn't know how to feel. Relief, maybe. Or just emptiness. After everything, we'd just returned to even. When I told Samantha, she just nodded. "Thank you." For what? For not pushing harder. That night, I went for a walk in the rain, the kind of heavy Seattle rain that soaks through your coat and cleans nothing. I kept thinking about Mom's draft email, about Dad's words, about the hollow space revenge left behind. I thought about what it cost, the sleepless nights, the friends I lost, the ache in my chest every time I looked at my sister and remembered that once, she was the person I trusted most. I realized revenge wasn't about justice anymore. It was about reclaiming a story that had been stolen, and now that I had it back, I didn't know what to do with it. At 3:42 a.m., my phone rang. Hospital. My breath caught before I even answered. "Ms. Harper," the nurse said softly. "I'm sorry. Your father passed away in his sleep." I didn't cry. Not right away. I just sat there, listening to the rain tapping against the window, whispering the same rhythm it always had. When I got to the hospital, Samantha was already there, sitting beside him. Her face buried in her hands. She looked up when I entered, her eyes swollen and red. "He didn't wake up," she whispered. I nodded, moving to the other side of the bed. We sat there for hours. No words, no fighting, just the quiet sound of rain and the steady beeping of a monitor that no longer mattered. At dawn, Samantha turned to me. "I don't know how to do this without him." "You will," I said softly. "We both will." She reached across the bed, taking my hand. For the first time in forever, I didn't pull away. Because in that moment, beneath the grief and the history and all the things we couldn't fix, she wasn't my enemy. She was my sister. By the time I arrived, people were already filing in. Neighbors, old friends, co-workers of my father's who I hadn't seen in years. Samantha was at the front, standing beside the casket, greeting everyone with that quiet grace she'd perfected long before the scandal. Her makeup was minimal, her hair pinned simply, but she still looked like she belonged in control of the room. When she saw me, she gave a small nod. Not warm, but not cold either. Just acknowledgement. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey." Her voice was steady. "Thank you for coming early." "I wasn't going to be late," I said. He hated that. That earned me a faint smile. "Yeah, he did." When the pastor began speaking, I tried to focus on his words, about love, legacy, and the peace of letting go. But all I could hear was the sound of the rain outside, tapping softly against the stained glass windows. Samantha spoke first. Her voice was calm. Her words chosen carefully, the same way she used to build arguments in court. She talked about Dad's patience, his stubborn gardening, and how he used to hum off key while fixing the faucet. It was good. Polished. Safe. Then it was my turn. I walked to the podium with shaking hands, my heart pounding against my ribs. "I used to think my dad was quiet because he didn't care," I began. "But I think now I understand. He was quiet because he carried everyone's noise. Mine, Samantha's, Mom's, all of it. He was the wall that kept the house from collapsing." I paused, glancing at Samantha. She was crying, silently, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I wish I'd told him thank you," I said softly, "for letting us break things and still calling it family." When I sat down, she reached out and touched my hand. Just a light touch, but it was enough. After the service, while people were leaving, Harold approached us. His expression was solemn, but there was something else there. Hesitation. "Emily. Samantha. Your father left something for both of you," he said. "A letter. He wanted it read privately, just the two of you." He handed me a sealed envelope thick with folded pages. The handwriting was unmistakably Dad's, slow, careful, slightly tilted to the right. We drove back to his house in silence. The living room was exactly how he'd left it. The faint smell of whiskey and cedar. The old recliner still creased from years of use. We sat on the couch, the letter between us like a fragile truce. "Do you want to read it?" Samantha asked. I nodded and unfolded the pages. Dad's voice echoed in my head as I began. Over the next week, we couldn't stop thinking about her. Grace. Harold confirmed the trust. He said she lived about an hour away in Tacoma. He didn't give us her contact directly, but he promised to pass along a message if we wanted to meet. Samantha surprised me by saying yes first. "I need to see her," she said. "I need to understand what kind of man Dad really was." I agreed. But deep down, I didn't know if I was ready. Meeting a stranger who shared your blood, your father's eyes, maybe your mother's ghost? It felt like reopening a wound that had barely scabbed. Still, I sent the message. 3 days later, an email arrived. "Hi, Emily and Samantha, I've been expecting this. Harold told me you might reach out. I'd love to meet. There's a cafe by the water in Tacoma that I go to every Saturday morning. Come if you're ready. Grace." Her tone was warm, gentle. I read it 3 times before forwarding it to Samantha. She called immediately. "We're going, right?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "We're going." Saturday morning, the drive was quiet, the kind of silence that hummed with too many thoughts. Samantha stared out the window, her reflection pale against the misty glass. "Do you think she hates us?" she asked. I shook my head. "She doesn't sound like she does. She has every reason to. Maybe that's why she won't." Samantha gave a small, uncertain smile. "You've changed, Em." "So have you." We both laughed softly. For once, it didn't sound bitter. The cafe was small, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. Through the window, we saw her immediately. Grace. She looked around our age, late 20s, maybe 30. Dark hair, familiar eyes. There was something about her posture, the way she stirred her coffee slowly, that reminded me of Dad. When we walked in, she looked up and smiled, gentle, cautious. "You must be Emily," she said. "And Samantha." Her voice was warm, calm. I nodded, heart pounding. "You look like him." "So do you," she said softly. "Both of you." We sat, and for the first time since that awful dinner at Aurelio's, the air between us felt peaceful. Not perfect. Not healed, but possible. My girls, if you're reading this, it means I'm finally resting. And you're probably both still too stubborn to speak without raising your voices. I won't pretend I didn't see what was happening. I know about the money, the lawyer, the stories. But I also know it wasn't really about any of that. It was about love, or what happens when love turns into something sharp. Samantha, you were always my planner. You wanted control because you thought it would keep you safe. Emily, you were my heart. You wanted honesty because you thought it would keep you whole. You were both right, and both are wrong, so here's what I've done. I stopped reading, eyes scanning the next paragraph in disbelief. I moved the rest of the estate, what's left of it, into a trust. It's not for either of you. It's for someone you both forgot. Samantha frowned. What? Who? I kept reading. Her name is Grace. The room went still. Grace? I echoed. Who the hell is Grace? Samantha's face drained of color. Wait, that name sounds... She's my daughter, the letter continued. Born before I met your mother. I never told you because I thought it would only hurt her more. But she reached out a few years ago, quietly. She's kind. And she forgave me when she didn't have to. My hands trembled. He had another daughter? Samantha's voice cracked. He had another family? I read the final lines. I don't expect you to understand. But I hope you'll meet her. Maybe she'll remind you both what forgiveness really looks like. Don't waste your lives punishing each other for my mistakes. You're still my girls. Always. I lowered the paper, heart pounding. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Samantha whispered, He lied to us. I shook my head. No, he just couldn't face it. She laughed bitterly. All this time, we were fighting over who mattered more, and we weren't even his only daughters. Her words stung, but she wasn't wrong. The irony was cruel. Grace looked nothing like I'd imagined. I had pictured someone fragile, maybe quiet, someone who would carry that same undertone of regret Dad always had when he spoke about the past. But she wasn't like that at all. She was steady. Her eyes were calm and curious, not accusing. Her smile was genuine, like she'd already forgiven us for 1,000 things we hadn't even said yet. I didn't know what to do with that kind of grace. We sat across from her at a corner table in the cafe. The sound of waves faint through the glass. Samantha's hands were clasped in front of her, stiff and defensive. Mine were tucked under the table, shaking. Grace stirred her coffee once, then looked at us both. I know this must be strange, she said softly. It's strange for me, too. I've known about you two for a few years, but I didn't want to intrude. Dad told me you were different. But he loved you. Samantha gave a tight laugh. He said that? Grace nodded. He talked about you every time we met. He said you were both strong in ways he wasn't. I swallowed hard. When did you meet him? The first time was about 4 years ago, she said. He showed up at the library where I work. He just walked in, holding a box of plants from his garden, said they were for my desk. That sounded like him. Quiet gestures instead of words. He didn't tell me right away who he was, she continued. But I knew. I'd seen old photos of him when I was little. Your mom knew him? I asked. Grace nodded. They were together for a short time before he met your mom. He left when she got pregnant, said he wasn't ready to be a father. She raised me alone, but she never spoke badly about him. Samantha leaned back, her jaw tight. And he just showed up years later? Like nothing happened? Grace's expression softened. He didn't come for forgiveness. He came because he wanted to make sure I was okay. I think he was ashamed. That word, ashamed, hung in the air. For a while, none of us spoke. Outside, the wind picked up, blowing rain against the window. Inside, the espresso machine hissed softly, filling the silence with something almost gentle. Grace finally broke it. "He wanted us to meet," she said. "He thought if we knew each other, we might understand him better. Maybe even each other." Samantha looked down. "He always thought love could fix everything." "Maybe it can't be fixed," I said quietly. "But maybe it can stop things from breaking more." Grace smiled faintly. "That's beautifully said." We stayed for nearly 2 hours. Grace asked about our childhood, about Mom, about growing up. She listened, really listened, like every detail mattered. When it was Samantha's turn to talk, her voice trembled at first. But Grace didn't interrupt or judge, and when it was my turn, I told her about the dinner, the inheritance, the fight, everything. When I finished, Grace didn't react with shock or pity. She just nodded slowly. "That must have hurt," she said softly. "Both of you," Samantha frowned. "I don't see how it hurt her. She's the one who—" Grace raised a hand gently. "I mean both of you," she said again. "You, because you felt unappreciated. Her, because she felt unseen. That's how family breaks. Not with one big betrayal, but with 1,000 little misunderstandings." Her words hit me like a mirror. Before we left, Grace reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "I think this belongs to both of you," she said, sliding it across the table. Inside was a photo, old, creased, faded at the corners. It was of Dad, younger, standing in front of a small lake. He was holding a baby, Grace, and smiling in a way I'd never seen in any of our family photos. But tucked behind it was another photo, one of Samantha and me as kids, sitting on the front porch covered in mud, grinning like fools. Grace had glued them together, back to back. "I found the first one in his box," she said. "He told me he kept both pictures on his nightstand. One side for the past, one for the present. He said they reminded him of who he was and who he still wanted to be." Samantha stared at the photo for a long time. Her lips trembled. "He kept us both?" Grace nodded. "He never stopped loving either of you." Samantha looked away, wiping her eyes. I just stared at the photo, at the man we thought we knew, and realized for the first time that he wasn't just ours. He was human, flawed, fragile, forgiven. Before we left, Grace hesitated. "There's something else," she said. "The trust Dad set up, I don't need it. I have a steady job, and my mom left me her house. I'd like to split it with you both." Samantha immediately shook her head. "No, it's yours. He wanted you to have it." Grace smiled gently. "He wanted peace, not money." "Maybe this is how we start." She reached out her hand, not to one of us, but to both. Samantha looked at me. I looked at her. Then, without a word, we both reached out. For the first time, I felt the warmth of her palm without resentment. Just family. Real family. On the drive home, the silence wasn't awkward. It was quiet in a way that felt new. Samantha finally spoke. "She's nothing like I expected." "No," I said softly. "She's better," she nodded, eyes distant. "You know, I think Dad wanted us to see her because she was the version of us that never got poisoned by the fighting. Maybe she's who we could have been," I said. "Or who we can still be," she whispered. That night, I got a call from Harold. "Emily," he said, "I just wanted you to know, the bank completed the final paperwork. The trust's distribution will include all 3 of you per Grace's request." "That's kind of her," I said. "She's a remarkable woman," Harold replied. "Your father was proud of all his daughters, you know. He told me once that he finally got it right the 3rd time." I smiled through the tears. "Yeah, I think he did." Later that night, I sat at my desk and wrote a letter I'd never send. "Mom, I met her, Grace. She's kind like you. And Sam? She's trying. We both are. I don't know if forgiveness is something you give once or if it's something you have to keep choosing. Every day. But I'm learning. And I think you'd be proud." I folded the letter and tucked it into the box where I kept Mom's old card, the one that said, "You're both my girls." For the first time, that sentence didn't sting. It felt true again. A week after meeting Grace, Samantha and I returned to Dad's house one last time to clean things out. The air was still thick with the smell of old wood and aftershave, that same quiet scent that always made the house feel like him. We moved slowly, packing photos, dishes, pieces of a life too full of memories. In his study, while wiping down his old desk, I noticed something odd, a small groove near the back panel, half hidden behind the drawer tracks. "Sam," I said quietly, "help me with this." We tugged and a hidden compartment slid open with a soft click. Inside was a small wooden box tied with twine and a folded envelope resting on top. Samantha opened it carefully. The letter was short, written in Dad's shaky handwriting. "For when you've both stopped fighting. Some things are meant to be found together." Inside the box were photographs, dozens of them. Grace as a baby. Mom is holding me in the hospital. Samantha on her first day of school. And one picture that stopped us both. Dad, standing between all three of us. It wasn't possible. Grace couldn't have been there. But she was. She must have met us once, years ago, when we were too young to remember. On the back of the photo, in Dad's writing, "All my girls. One day you'll know." Samantha pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes glistening. "He tried to keep us connected. Even then," I nodded, tears finally breaking free. "He was building a bridge we didn't see." For a long moment, we just stood there, holding that photo like it was proof that maybe love wasn't perfect, but it was patient, and it had waited for us to catch up. We met Grace at the lake from the photograph, the same one where Dad had once stood, holding her as a baby. The air smelled of pine and wet soil, and the water rippled in soft gray circles under the morning wind. Samantha brought flowers. I brought the photo. Grace brought nothing but herself, and somehow that felt right. We stood in silence for a while, each lost in our own memories. Then Grace said quietly, "He used to come here every spring. Said it made him feel forgiven." Samantha's voice broke. "Do you think he forgave us?" Grace smiled gently. "I think he never blamed you." I knelt down at the water's edge, placing the photo inside a clear frame and setting it on a flat rock. "He wanted us together," I said. "So maybe that's what we give him now. The peace he tried to build." Grace nodded. "Then let's promise him." The three of us clasped hands, the wind picking up around us. "I promise," Samantha whispered. "I promise," I echoed. Grace closed her eyes. "Me too." The lake shimmered in the gray light, and for the first time, it felt like forgiveness wasn't a word anymore. It was something living between us. 3 months passed. The city shifted from gray skies to early summer light, the kind that made even the old streets of Seattle feel forgiving. I was working again, steady clients, new projects, and for the first time in years, my apartment felt like home instead of a hiding place. Samantha had sold her house in Bellevue and moved into a small apartment downtown. She sent me photos sometimes, coffee cups, sunsets, her trying to cook without burning something. It was strange but nice, and Grace, she visited every other Sunday. We'd have dinner, sometimes laugh too loud, sometimes fall quiet when Dad's name came up. But it didn't hurt as much anymore. Then one morning, I got a message from Samantha. "Hey, thought you should know. I'm going to therapy." Real therapy this time. No pretending. I smiled at my phone. "Good," I replied. "Maybe I'll join you sometime." A pause. Then her answer. "Maybe that's the point. We're finally learning how to be real family." I looked out the window. Rain had started again, soft and steady. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. The letter arrived on a Thursday. No return address, just my name written in Dad's old handwriting. Neat, deliberate, a little shaky. Inside was a single page and a small key taped to the corner. "My girls, if you've come this far together, I can rest easy. There's one last thing I want you to have. It's in the old garden shed behind the house. It's not money. It's something that grew where love once broke. Dad! I called Samantha and Grace, and the three of us met that evening at the house. The garden was overgrown, wild with vines and dandelions, but it still smelled faintly of lavender. Mom's favorite. We unlocked the shed. Inside was a small wooden chest covered in dust. When we opened it, we found seed packets, neatly labeled in Dad's handwriting, hope, forgiveness, patience, and beneath them, 3 small pots, one for each of us. Grace smiled through her tears. He wanted us to plant something new. Samantha touched the soil, nodding. Maybe this time we'll let it grow. And for once, none of us had anything else to say. We didn't need to. We planted the seeds on a quiet Sunday morning, 3 pots lined up on my balcony, sunlight spilling through the mist like a promise. Samantha knelt beside me, her hands in the soil. Grace read the labels again. Hope, forgiveness, patience. Which one do you want? Grace asked. Samantha smiled. Forgiveness, she said. Feels like the hardest one. I laughed softly. Then I'll take patience, Grace grinned. Guess that leaves me with hope. We pressed the seeds into the dirt, watered them, and sat there in silence. It wasn't a movie ending, no grand music, no perfect resolution, just the quiet sound of wind, birds, and 3 women who finally understood that peace doesn't come from revenge. It comes from rebuilding. And sometimes, it starts with planting something small and staying long enough to watch it grow. What do you think? Was Emily's revenge justified, or did she go too far before finding peace? If you were in her place, would you have exposed Samantha publicly? Do you believe forgiveness can ever truly rebuild broken family ties? Comment below, what would you have planted? Hope, forgiveness, or patience? If you felt this story, share it with someone who might need a reminder. Healing is possible, even after betrayal.